everyone, thank you for joining us here at Hope for Our Times. And like always, I love to have on guests that challenge us, make us think, and really bring the truth, and also great friends, as my guest is today. Olivier Melnick is joining us today from Shalom in Messiah Ministries. Olivier, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Tom, always an opportunity. Any opportunity I have to join your show, I always enjoy it. It's always fun. And thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
You are a very kind man. And Olivier's really become such a great friend, even though he moved to Texas and I'm stuck out here on the left coast. But hey, that's all right.
You're jealous. You're just jealous.
I am jealous. And that's a sin. But I am jealous. But nevertheless, we have a lot to talk about everyone today. Here it is. It's Christmas time again. And every Christmas time, Jesus was a Palestinian shows up. We have a lot to talk about there. But there's also a lot of people out there that proclaim the Jews in Israel are not the real Jews. And so we're going to work through that. I'm certain that you guys have heard about it. But what about the Rothschilds? What does Wikipedia have to say? So many different things. So, Olivier, let's just start right here, and then we'll work through the Rothschilds and all the rest of it. The Jews that are in Israel, I keep hearing it. I got to deal with it every day, it seems like. They're not the real Jews. I mean, I have seen some absurd things that are out there, but nevertheless, let's work through this. Where does that concept come from? And then we'll also get to why are people actually believing it, which is another story in and of itself.
Well, if you really want to get the truth about who the real Jews are, you can always go to either Wikipedia or Candace Owens, and then you will definitely get who the Jews are not. The problem in all seriousness is something that I have encountered quite a bit as well. Really in the last few years, people either post on my channel or send me emails or at conferences that you and I attend and participate in, they always say like, well, I heard that the modern Jews are not really descendants of what you could call Judean Jews, Jews from the Middle East, that they are really Gentile converts from this outside of this claim to fame, somewhat obscure people group known as the Khazars. And so I decided, okay, I got to put something together. So I have a video on my YouTube channel at Shalom in Messiah on that. So what happened is that there's a country that existed between two countries that are completely insignificant, prophetically, by the way, Turkey and Russia. We never hear about Turkey and Russia in the Bible, right? No, of course not.
Not in the Bible, and certainly not in news today. Never hear about them.
Right, exactly. So there was a country called Khazar that existed for a few centuries in between Turkey and Russia in the Caucasus region. And basically, the Khazars became independent in the 7th century. We're talking about AD now, not BC. And they settled in that area and became their own country, and their independence lasted for a while until about almost the end of the 900s, where they were taken over by a big fight, big battle by Kiev, basically absorbed by Russia, and they completely disappeared from history, from anything you can hear about them until recently. By the middle of the 13th century, nobody was remembering or talking about the Khazars whatsoever. They're going like, who are the Khazars? Who are they? It came back in the 1970s when the guy wrote a book, and I'll tell you in a minute about the book, where all of a sudden people were starting to claim, and this book made a little bit of a splash, like, hey, the Khazars are the ancestors of the real Jews of today. Now, how is that possible? And the question is not just how, but why. Let me answer the why right now. And this is really along the lines of what you and I talk all the time about, if the Jews in Israel are not the real Jews, if they're not the real owners of the land who belong in the land of Eretz Israel, then they are frauds. And they are really stealing land that does not belong to them. And it gives a great opportunity for the anti-Semites, the anti-Zionists, the enemies of Israel to say, hey, I told you, they're not even the real Jews. Palestinians need to take the whole land back. So that's the rationale behind this conspiracy theory, really, of the Khazars being the real Jews. So what happened? Why did people say, well, the Khazars are the real Jews? Well, around 740 A.D., the king of Khazaria, his name was Bulan, King Bulan, basically, the story says that he decided to get spiritual one day. I don't know if he woke up one day, but he decided, and then this is a true story. He decided to say, well, I want to get right with God, so I'm going to get spiritual, but I don't know if I want to be a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew. So he called the best in each religion, and he said, convince me. At the end of the day, the rabbi was able to convince him that, you know, what he liked best was the religion of Judaism. So King Bulan chose Judaism and converted to Judaism. And apparently he a Gentile. His family, this close family, possibly some of his immediate court members, and some people say up to the vast majority of the whole country of Khazaria. Now that's harder to prove, but he's the king, and he says, I converted to Judaism, so you know what? You want to be part of my country, part of my court, part of my kingdom, you have to do the same. So it was not just him. It was several of his family members, immediate family member, and even in his court decided, okay, this is where it's at. This is what we're going to do. And so this is what happened at that time. In the date I gave you is around 740. Now, in the 10th century, there was a famous rabbi that basically he was made aware of that story, and he decided he was going to do some research. So he sent some people to the country of Khazaria to see if there was truth to it, and there was very little that they could discover. There were some letters, there was some correspondence. We know the story is true, but we don't have a lot of details. There's also another book, a Jewish book called the Kuzari, a book of argument in defense of a despised religion. That's the title of the book, in the 12th century, that tells the story of how King Bulan and his court converted to Judaism. So that story is true. But what people are saying is that there's no real Jews left. All the Jews come from the Khazars, and that of course is not true. That conspiracy theory came out in 1976. Well, maybe a little before, but around that time, when this book came out known The 13th Tribe, saying that and claiming that all modern Jews were descendants of Khazars. It was written by Arthur Koestler, and that book at the time was really, people didn't pay really attention to it, but then eventually some people picked it up and used it to prove that today's Jews are descendants of the Khazar. Let me quote from the book that Koestler wrote. The large majority of surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European and perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus. Once believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, the Uyghur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So they're going back to that book. Now, of course, this is a conspiracy theory, and then he continues in the book. He goes, I'm aware of the danger that it may be maliciously misinterpreted as a denial of the state of Israel's right to exist, but that right is not based, that's what Koestler say, that right is not based on the apathetic use of words here, apathetic origins of the Jewish people, nor on the mythological covenant of Abraham with God. It is based on international law, on the United Nations decision 1947. Tom, what can you tell us about the apathetic origins of the Jewish people and the mythological covenant between Abraham and God? How mythological is it?
Yeah, well, it's not. I thought I was interviewing you, but that's okay.
No,
because
I thought
no,
I would.
this is
I'm throwing you something. I mean,
no,
I thought
this
it would
is
be
well,
good that you-
yeah. I mean, so I see this all the time, and what's happening with this mythological covenant. I mean, I've even met Jews in Israel that seem to think that. They think that because it stems from atheism, and so Judaism was a religion, but it was a religion based on our Hebrew roots, and some of these stories, I've met Jews over there that believe some of these stories were made up. And I think this, Olivier, when the last trip I had to Israel, coming up again in March, I can't wait to go. You know, you're going in January. I think you're going this month. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. So I hope I can squeeze in with you. Anyways, we're there in October, and we see these things, as we know, any of us who've been there for a while, you start going to archaeology sites, more and more is being discovered. Yeah. And when I was there in Jerusalem, the first day I'm looking at different things, I'm thinking, wow, these things are being discovered because God is disclosing himself to the whole world that this book is real, you can trust it for everything that's in it. And then I thought, wait a minute, I think I know what's really happening. Because if you go back to COVID, the Jews people weren't allowed to go to Israel. I mean, the flights were off, nobody would travel. Since COVID, tours have been way down, then the war happens, and all these things. What I believe is happening, Olivier, is that God he's showing himself to the Jew first right now, and then the Gentile, and he's showing the Jews, no, this book is true. You are finding discoveries that you thought Pilate didn't really exist. A lot of you thought David didn't really exist, wasn't really a king or wasn't a big kingdom, all these different things. You know, with Rehoboam and Jeroboam, and you start looking at that, you're going, well, wait a minute. You have the southern kingdom, you have the northern kingdom, and then the temple that was up north was discovered. And then so all of these discoveries are showing to the Jew first, this book is real. The covenant with Abraham is real. It's God's word. Everything in it is true. One of the reasons why I teach prophecy, you're on my program. I'm not supposed to be doing all this talking. But one of the reasons why we talk about Bible prophecy is because Bible prophecy doesn't just cover the last days. It covers the history of the Jews. It covers the history of the Greeks and the Romans, the Medo-Persian Empire, Egypt, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. It covers the birth of the Savior, the Jewish Messiah. Right. And it takes us up into the future, but it is all connected. You can't separate any of it. And the word is true, and all the prophecies prove that the Bible is true and prove that God has made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's an everlasting covenant. It's in the Bible. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many who are against Israel hate anybody talking about Bible prophecy, because rightly understood, Bible prophecy has to take you back to Israel, back to the Jew, and back to God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, an everlasting covenant. God says it's a forever covenant. God will never abandon his people, Israel. So these things are biblical. I better stop talking, Olivier, because I'll take up our entire time, because you asked me one question.
But that was a pertinent question, and the bottom line, and that's going to be the overarching theme of this conversation, Tom, is that when you look at all this, it boils down to jealousy. People are jealous of the Jews because God has a special relationship. It doesn't give us salvation. Salvation is the same to everybody, Jew, Gentile. We have to accept the death and resurrection of Yeshua, Jesus, for our sins. We have to believe in that. Otherwise, there's no salvation. And at the end of the day, that's the most important decision anyone can make. But there is a program that God put together, and the program hinges around Israel and the Jews. And people are just jealous of the Jews. And there's really two ways that people approach their relationship to the Jews. It's either no Jews or I want to be the new Jew. So they want to replace the Jews or they want to eliminate the Jews. But those are the two options. And right now, and the Khazars, basically, they're saying they're not the real Jews. The Khazars are the real Jews. What happened is that in 1970s, that book came out, and then in 2008, another guy, and shame on him because he's Jewish, Shlomo Sands, he wrote a book. Just the cover of the book would make you not want to read it, but a lot of people are going to want to read it because they already come with a preconceived idea that they want to, again, get rid of the Jews. It's called The Invention of the Jewish People. And so in 2008, The Invention of the Jewish People, Shlomo Sands, he further validates what Arthur Koestler said, and this is a quote of his. In the 70s, Israel was caught up in the momentum of territorial expansion, and without the Old Testament in its hand and the exile of the Jewish people in its memory, it would have no justification for annexing Arab Jerusalem and establishing settlements in the West Bank, that's Judea and Samaria for you guys, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and even the Sinai Peninsula. So that guy, Shlomo Sands, take it one step further. He's saying that the Jews are not the real Jews, but they're using basically a biblical history. They're pulling verses out of the Bible to validate and to give them, to justify their annexation, their colonization, and taking over of the land of Palestine. That's what they're saying. But that what happened with the Khazars is that it was debunked by archaeology in the late 1800s, actually 1896. There was a big important discovery that was made, known, I don't know if you've heard about it, Tom. It's known today as the Cairo Geniza. Have you heard that before? The Cairo Geniza, which was one of the greatest Jewish discovery. It contained over 400,000 medieval Jewish manuscripts and fragments of manuscripts as well. And most of them are being kept at the University of Cambridge in England. And there was one fragment in there that gave insight on the Khazar theory that basically proved that the Khazars were not real Jews. They were convert to Judaism. Now, are there today in the world in 2024, are there in the world Jews who have Khazarian heritage? Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there are. Why wouldn't they be? But the vast majority of the Jewish people today are descendants of the Jews of the Middle East, and basically the two main divisions of Jewish people, the Ashkenazi, the Eastern European Jews, and the Sephardic, Spain and Middle Eastern Jews. So the Jews of today are descendants of those two groups. And the Khazarians would be in Eastern Europe, and there are some people that might have some Khazarian blood running through their veins, but from there to extrapolate and say that all modern Jews are descendants of Gentile converts to Judaism is ludicrous. It cannot be. It was debunked by archaeology, and later on actually debunked by genetics, which is a lot more important even than archaeology. This guy, let me get his name, a Jewish guy actually, Iran Elaik, in a journal that you and I, Tom, we have subscription to this because we read it every month. It's called the Journal of Genome Biology and Evolution. You and I, we have a subscription, right?
I've memorized every publication.
And so in 2013, in the missing link of Jewish European ancestry, he has a controversial conclusion to a paper he wrote, but in it, this is what he says. We compare two genetic models for European Jewish ancestry depicting a mixed Khazarian, European, Middle Eastern, and sole Middle Eastern origins. We conclude that the genome of European Jews is a tapestry of ancient populations, including Judaized Khazars, that's true, Greco-Roman Jews, Mesopotamian Jews, and Judeans, and that their population structure was formed in the Caucasus and the banks of the Volga, with roots stretching to Canaan and the banks of the Jordan. So the guy maybe is pushing a little more for the Khazars in his genetic study, but he's saying that it cannot just be converts to Judaism from Khazaria. It's a mix of Jews that were Jewish converts, Greco-Roman Jews, Mesopotamian Jews, and Judeans, the Jews from Israel. So in his way to water down the whole definition, he admits clearly that there is such a thing as a Judean Jew or a real Jew that comes from Israel, and so genetics and DNA has proven now by 2024 that Jews are real Jews, and they're not converts from the Khazars.
And they were spread out to the four corners of the earth. What a coincidence, just like the Bible says, and they be gathered back again. And you know who else believes they're real Jews? The Muslims. Why? Because they want to kill them all. Why do you want to get rid of them? We hate them because they're Jews. So interesting arguments. You have just unbelievable. All right. Let me ask you about Rothschilds, because so many people say Israel is because of the Rothschilds, and there's, and whatever else. What's the story on the Rothschild?
Okay, so we've determined that and again that the whole thing on Khazars I have on my YouTube channel at Shalom and Messiah. You go there and sorry.
No, let me say something about that. By the way, I forgot to do this, Olivier. I hope you'll forgive me. Go to shalominmessiah.com. That is Olivier's website. Listen, I encourage you to go there. He also has his YouTube channel. Shalom in Messiah on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. It helps us to be able to combat disinformation with the truth of the Bible, because even like we're talking about right now, so much disinformation. You have everything from Candace Owens and the Khazars and all of the lies that keep on coming. Jesus was Palestinian, which we'll get into. But again, shalominmessiah.com, Shalom in Messiah YouTube. I encourage you to go there, like, subscribe, and share. And that's the only way we can get the word out is through you guys doing that. So please help us to combat the disinformation and the lies with the truth of the Bible. With that, Olivier, and this is where I cut you off, you said you actually have this in detail on your YouTube channel. What's that called?
Well, it's if you go, my YouTube channel is Shalom and Messiah, and if you go there and you do a search for Khazars or Rothschilds or Protocols of Zions, I have a whole message on that, so yeah, I mean, you can find more details, and really, if anybody is interested. I always regret when I say that, but I cannot help myself. Anybody who's interested, they can through the YouTube channel. They can email me. Don't put it in the description, because I cannot possibly look at every single description that I get, every single comment, sorry. But find the email in the description and email me and say, I heard you on Pastor Tom's program. Would you please email me your notes on the Khazars or Rothschilds, and I'll send you my PowerPoint as a PDF with all the notes and all the sources, so you have more than what we can discuss in this program.
That's great. That's great.
And yes, so my pleasure. So the Rothschild is the long. To this day, it continues. It falls under the concept of Jews controlling the financial world. Tom, I think I shared that at the last conference that you and I did together in Temecula. Great conference, by the way. It was incredible. Recently there was a lady, a sweet old lady, probably in the mid 80s, my guess. She called me for the ministry. She said, I want to donate some money to Shalom and Messiah. And I love Israel. I recently bought this from this Jewish man because I wanted to support Israel. So I bought this. I forgot what it was. And originally, the price was a little too much for me. So I tried to Jew him down. And she tells me this on the phone.
my gosh.
And I'm going, oh, lady, don't say this. So I didn't have the heart to correct her on the phone, but it was a good example of people are desensitized. They don't really. She did not have a mean bone in her body, that little lady, but she did not pay attention. And she said, yeah, I tried to Jew him down. In other words, I tried to bargain down for a smaller price because that was too much, whatever it was. And that goes back to to prior to the Rothschilds. It goes back to the Middle Ages when Jews could not, at a point in the Middle Ages where they could not own land, they could not be part of a guild, they could not be workers for the city, they could do very little. So they ended up being able to do one thing. They end up being money lenders for the Christians who could not borrow from other Christians. And they started to develop this concept of a banking system where they would loan some money and then get money back with an interest, and then they were charged by the kings and the princes and the lords an interest rate because they were making money. They were charged a tax, on their interest rate. So they ended up having to pay a tax that was higher than the interest rate that they were charging. So this went up and up and up, and tax, more interest rate, more tax, more interest rate, and this gave birth to the myth, which still is very, very much alive today, of the greedy Jew. So when the Rothschild came onto the scene, now the patriarch of the Rothschild family, his name is Mayer Amschel Rothschild, was the founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty, and he was born in 1744. So you're looking at almost 300 years ago. By the age of 12, he becomes an orphan, and he has 4 siblings that he has to become the mom and dad for these 4 siblings. And so he was the older brother, but he had to take care of his 4 siblings. And so he quickly became, he was very good with numbers and with money. So he became an apprentice to a banker in Hanover, in Holland. And he became the personal dealer to the crown prince in 1763. He was only, 19 years old. And he started to really amass his fortune during the French Revolution that started in 1789. And so that's how he started to gather his fortune. And he was very good with money. And Tom, are Jews greedy? Not necessarily, and I'll explain that in a minute. Are Jews good with money? Many are good with money, but the two are not synonymous. Greed and shrewdness are 2 different things. And I want to believe I'm by no stretch of the imagination, I'm not, wealthy and rich and financially independent, but I think I understand how money works, and to the best of my ability with what the Lord has given me, I try to make it work, the best possible. That's called shrewdness. That's called a business sense. And a lot of Jewish people have that, and it's part of the DNA, I think, of that God has given us. Are some Jews greedy? Absolutely. Does that mean that when you're Jewish, you're always going to be greedy? No. Tom, I got news for you in our audience. There are some greedy Gentiles. They exist. Why? Because Jews and Gentiles, what do we share in common?
Sin.
The sin nature. Exactly. So yes, they exist, but they're not greedy because they're Jewish. They're greedy because they're sinners, and they happen to be Jewish too. But going back to the Rothschild, he had 5 sons. He delegated his business to his 5 sons, and what's interesting is the sons were so spread out in all of Europe during the wars of Napoleon, and like the early 1800s. Napoleon became an emperor in 1804. So like early 1800s, he had his sons spread out all over Europe. That sometimes 2 of his sons would finance 2 sides of a conflict. Is that good practice? No, I don't think so.
Sounds like the presidential administration.
Yeah, so it's I would it's like almost like business is business. It's not a good. It was. I don't think it was a good practice. I don't think it was a good practice. But originally, the name Rothschild, even in the late 19th century, early 20th century, was not always negative. I don't know if you remember the movie A Fiddler on the Roof.
If I were a
Uh,
Rothschild,
if I well, if
if I were,
actually.
if I were a rich man, that
Well,
one.
if I were a rich man, actually, in Yiddish, the original Yiddish song was "If I Were a Rothschild." That's exactly that is the title of the song, Shalom Aleichem, who wrote the original Yiddish text for the story and in the song, and it was not necessarily a negative thing, but the Rothschild family basically. Started to really finance a lot of the wars under Napoleon, and again get a bad reputation because there's sometimes they were on both sides of the same conflict, which was that's kind of ugly, and it has nothing to do because they're Jewish. It's just like maybe there was some greed, maybe there was some mistakes made, but a lot of cartoons by anti-Semites were published and started to paint this the very negative picture of the Rothschild family to the point where today, when you hear Rothschild, in the mind of an anti-Semite or somebody who might lean that way, Rothschild equals money, equals Jewish, equals takeover. Those words they're all connected. It's not necessarily true, but that's the picture that was painted for 200 years by a lot of anti-Semites. I mean, there's a lot of really bad cartoons, that were published of Rothschild controlling the world with big big claws, controlling the banking system, and the problem is that people don't they don't check for facts. There's even a 21st century cartoon of a pig feeding piglets as a multinational banking controlled by the Rothschild family. And I'll send you the graphics. Maybe you can put it in your video. And so it's the Rothschild. The root of the problem again is the myth of the greedy Jew, and it continued throughout the centuries, throughout the decades, I should say, of pushing this idea that the Jews want to control the world to the point where, and I have it in my office. It's behind me. I have a little piece of wood I bought in Poland in 2010 when I was there to go to Auschwitz, and it's about the size of my hand. It's an old man with a beard, supposed to be a Jew. He's got a yarmulke on his head, counting coins at his table. And on the bottom of that picture is the equivalent of 1 penny, glued on the bottom right of that little wood carving with a picture on it. And you hang that in your house somewhere in Poland, and that is your good luck charm. You hang the money counting Jew in your house, and that will bring you good luck, and you will become rich because you've got that good luck charm of the greedy counting Jew. I bought this in 2010 on the street, on the market in Poland, in Krakow. So the financial leadership of the Rothschild family was also seen by Henry Ford, who was an anti-Semite, as the epitome of the Jewish financial takeover, and so there's no truth to it. Where they were shrewd, they were very very popular in the financial world because they were good with money. They were influential, absolutely true. But the level of greed that is being painted on the Rothschild there's no foundation for it. There were stories again, the bigger story is how they finance both sides of the of a war, or also the final battle of Napoleon in 1815 in Waterloo. It was said that Nathan Rothschild, wasn't one of the sons, rushed out during that battle to the coast of Belgium, through the English Channel to London, to tell, it cost him a lot of money to arrive to London, and a day before the news of Napoleon's defeat arrived there, the internet didn't exist there, it took longer. And the story goes that he claiming that the Rothschild profit from the Waterloo battle, from the news that he was able to give, was 135 million pounds, which back in the days would have been a gazillion. And the story was a hoax. He was never there. So all those stories are invented about the Rothschild controlling things. They were shrewd business people that were forced, really, before them, the Jews were forced into the finance world because they couldn't do anything else, and they were good at it. But there were some bad apples. And I would say within the Rothschild family, some bad decisions were made. Some of the reasons why people want to destroy the reputation of the Rothschilds might be that the man who, and I don't want to go too long, I'll a couple more minutes and we'll be done on that. The man who invented the word anti-Semitism, his name is William Marr. He invented the word in 1879, and he had worked for a family close to the Rothschild, and he had been turned down in 1841 for a promotion that was given to according to him, a less deserving Jew. So he recalled that those are his words, the inventor of the word anti-Semitism, the Goy had to bear the consequences of the economic crisis. So that's one of the reasons why some bad blood started to be developed. Another reason why, possible reason for the Rothschilds' greed theory is Edmund the Rothschild. There's so many first names, so many family members, but he was a strong supporter of Zionism. And Satan is going to do throw everything he can to destroy the Jews and destroy Israel. That's the biblical prophecy right there. Edmund the Rothschild was known as his name was the known benefactor. He purchased a total of more than 125,000 acres in Israel, known back then as Palestine, to develop Jewish land, paying a lot of money for Jewish land that was, as swamp infested with malaria and very, very bad land. But the massive land purchase gave credence to the anti-Semitic claims that Jews control the banks and want to also control the world. So he was also Lionel Rothschild was connected to Lord Balfour, who wrote the Balfour Declaration. So all these people were influential, were connected, and so that there was, again, this jealousy that the Jews are trying to control the world. I could go on and on and on, but
yeah, and with it's this particular Rothschilds who purchased all that land over in Israel, Edmund, where so many people will come out and say, see, this is modern day Israel, it was invented by the Rothschilds, and then they'll make the Balfour connection, and then they go into the British Mandate, but it all started because of those Rothschilds. By the way, a couple of other things before we go on. First of all, we found that picture of the pig. Let's show it so everybody can see it. There you go.
That's the one. That's the one.
So there you go. And so you see this, and this kind of stuff goes everywhere. And Mossad is blamed for pretty much everything now. So you have between Rothschilds and Mossad, but that picture says 1,000 words, doesn't it? So yeah, you look.
Okay, so now you have on that. Show the cartoon again, real quick. I mean, let's analyze that cartoon, and the stupidity of that cartoon is that now you've got the Rothschild, a Jewish family, financing ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram, another terrorist group, who are hell-bent on doing what? Number one, killing the little Satan. Who's the little Satan, Tom?
The little Satan is Israel.
Israel. Yeah. So those guys are, so basically the Rothschild are self-inflicting Jews. They say, hey, let's finance those who want to kill us. This makes no sense at all.
Yeah, but this is the way that anti-Semitism goes. It's there's the group who say those aren't really Jews there, they need to all be gone. And then there's a group of Muslims who says these are all Jews, they need to be gone. Either way, they all have the same target. Let's get rid of all those people that we would say are really the Jews. By the way, we also have this, Olivier and I, we made this documentary a few years back, Anti-Semitism through the ages. Will the hatred ever stop? I got to ask Olivier all kinds of questions. It's excellent, goes through the centuries, going back to the very first century and walking right up on through the days. It's a download that's available at the Hope for Our Times store. If you're interested, you can go there, hopeforourtimes.com. And right now, it's half price too, but it's a downloadable. If you want to do a download, it's great. You will love it. You'll be very well educated, as I was when I asked Olivier the questions. Olivier, we've already gone 40 minutes. 4-0.
Should we stop and do another program later on the rest?
I think we should, because I want to ask you about the protocols, Wikipedia on Zionism. I have a lot of things I want to ask you on. If you don't mind coming back, and let's do another one, because there's so much more that I want to do with you. Jesus being a Palestinian, there's a lot going on there. But before you go away for now, once again, how do we connect with you? I know.
Okay, so yeah, you can connect with us. We started a new ministry February of this year, and it's called Shalom in Messiah. You go to shalominmessiah.com, and we exist to fight anti-Semitism and equip Christians to do the same, and in the process, Christians be equipped to be mobilized and to help Jewish people, because we believe that we are entering into a time where Christians are going to have to put their money where their mouth is and really be proactive on how to rescue and shelter Jewish people. So that's something that our ministry is partnering with another organization to help Christians organize on a network to help Jewish people. So this is a fascinating time that we live in. Shalominmessiah.com, you go to connect. There's all kinds of things you can ask us for. But the last thing, when you connect, it says, please tell me about the network that Olivier spoke about. If you believe, if in your heart you go like, hey, I want to help the Jewish people. I love Israel. I love the Jews, like the Bible tells us we should. It's Genesis 12:3. Then connect with us, and it will put you in touch with that network, and a vetting process will be started, and you'll become part of the network to become one of the new righteous among the nations to rescue and shelter Jews for such a time as this. Shalominmessiah.com. And on YouTube, come visit, subscribe, thumbs up. There's two of them. There's Shalom and Messiah YouTube, and there is the Olivier's 1-minute devotional. I migrated now my devotionals to a separate channel. You can get them every day of the week on that channel. And please subscribe. We'd love to have you there. And Tom, thank you so much for having me. I know I got a little long on the explanations. I'm sorry, but we need the. That's why I want to send people my notes, because I don't want just them to say, well, the Khazars are not the real Jews. Well, yeah. And then what?
I mean, so that's what we hear, and I love it. Olivier's website is fantastic. Plus, you can subscribe to his newsletter, which comes out all the time. And like he said,
yeah, my blog, the blog articles. I just posted one yesterday, and I'm doing a video. The video is being produced as we speak. Basically, debunking the Palestinian Jesus syndrome, or because there is this Palestinian Jewish Jesus syndrome right now. They're trying to push down our throat that Jesus was the first Palestinian. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But we have to keep this for another program. I know
it is. We'll keep that for another program, because there's so much going on there that everybody needs to know, and there's a spiritual reason behind it. But with that also, just let everybody know. So I will be in Huntington Beach New Year's Eve with Pastor Joe Pettick at Calvary Chapel of the Harbor and Lee Brainerd doing my annual New Year's Eve prophecy update. I've been doing these for, I believe, 29 years now. Started in a home and been doing them 29 years. So that's coming New Year's Eve. Join us in Huntington Beach. Information is on our website. But also, a couple of conferences coming up. I have one that I'm going to be at in Las Vegas with Kurt Reed, Don Perkins, Brandon Holthouse, and Billy Crone. And you have one in Texas that you are going to. That's way down south with Dr. Andy Woods. Randall Price is going to be there, and Bill Federer is going to be there, and you're going to be there. That sounds really exciting. So
yes, that's going to be in February, and I'll put something on my channel as well.
So February for Texas, January for Las Vegas, and love to see people at both. Wouldn't that be cool? That would be outstanding.
That'd be great.
That would be great. So make sure you connect with Olivier. If you're in Texas in that time, check out his conference. It's going to be great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. God bless you guys. And 2025 is going to be rocking and rolling, baby. So remember, keep looking up because our redemption draws near. God bless you, everyone.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivier.
Shalom. Be blessed.